Okay, so now the 5 minutes will be recorded and will be sent to you later on. Feel free to share to colleagues or other friends if they are interested. And we will have several more events. So on VR, and on March and April. So if you are interested to know more about Metaverse or VR for DNL, so feel free to join. So that's the promotion. So let me start the discussion. So today I will talk about high assessment with proctoring and beyond proctoring. So four of us will have different concerns or different focus. So we will know more about this later on. I noticed there will be colleagues from secondary schools, from startup companies, etc. Also, of course, teachers and colleagues in different universities. So hope you actually enjoy. So you can find today's, at least my slide deck through this link. So there are also some extra links inside this slide that you can click for more information. So for today's panelists, we have four of us. So I'm Dr. Leon Lei from Hong Kong U, and Darren from Poly U, Kershaw from CTU, and Paul from CHK. So we are all of us actually always get together to share experience and then to discuss how things, in particular e-learning things can be done, how those e-learning things can be done. And would like to share today is that to share the experience for online assessment. So again, why we organize these events, because we are funded by UTC to run some webinars and workshops and conference based on this e-teaching for you project. So if you're interested, so feel free to click the link and to look around. And in particular, some recordings or some events we've done before. So on hybrid instructions, copyright issues, AI for teaching and learning, etc. So feel free to click the link for more information. And just two promotions, so it's talking about virtual reality. I believe in higher education in K-12 schools, so there are lots of initiatives on VR development. So if you are interested, so feel free to click the link. So we have different applications from medicine, from education, from construction, and civil engineering or building surface, etc. So building surface, etc. And you can try to also learn from them. So for your future development. So today we will talk about two things. The first is a sharing from universities, from all of us, and we have a roundtable discussion. So this project is run by UGC. It's also supported by IEEE Region 10, Hong Kong section, and Asia Pacific region, EAC. Okay, so let's talk about my part. So I will just spend around 10 minutes to talk about my part will be on text proctoring. So Hong Kong U actually, similar to other universities as well as K-12 schools, we also implement proctoring. So of course, as a educational developer or colleague in teaching center, so we always encourage teachers to try various kinds of assessment at the same time. So proctor assessments, other assessment, continuous assessment, etc. We also talk about open book, open everything assessments before. So if you are interested to know about this, you can click this link for more information. But I would like to just focus on proctor assessment today. It's because we cannot avoid proctor assessment, in particular in STEM and other subjects. First of all, for example, for STEM subjects, they will have a definite only one correct answer. For example, calculations in calculus or in engineering calculations, etc. So there will be just one correct answer. And once students submit all the results to us, we actually can identify who copy from home or actually who actually have some who are cheating, etc. So it's difficult to identify plagiarism afterwards. So that's why we have to do the proctoring during the examination. And of course, there are also some requirements from accreditation parties. For example, engineering, for law, and for accounting, etc. They have all kinds of requirements. So that's why proctor assessment is necessary. We actually did a study before. So when we start the pandemic, so we did a study in 2020 to talk about the proctor assessment. So whether to assess the fairness, scalability, and effectiveness, etc. So that's why we walk around to check for more information. So for in 2008, there is a meta studies talking about 100,000 attempts of product assessment, and they find out that there will be a higher mean scores for unproctored assessments, and is independent of the testing and countermeasures. So that's why we have a concern, or we have understanding that we should go for product assessment, and we should find a good way to do the product assessment. So you can check this link for the meta analysis if you're interested. And then that's why we also have a study in 2020, starting from last year. And of course, for that studies, actually we go for going for different kinds of product surveys. I believe Crusher, Darren, and Paul will talk a bit about also on third-party product surveys. I just talk a little bit here. There are lots of surveys online, so Respondus is the most popular, but there are also various of things or various of ones. Proctored will be more used in frequently used in US, etc. And of course, we for Hong Kong U, we try to investigate and explore whether we should use, and eventually we identify not to use because of the lack of flexibility for on-campus examination. Because for example, some courses will need to draw using paper and pencil. Some of them need a communication with teachers and students. Some of them want to have copy and paste. Some of them want to have some other things. So those things can be catered by those standard proctoring surveys. Of course, they can provide some tailor-made survey, but it will cost even more. So that's why we aim not to go for that in Hong Kong U. And of course, the second thing is high cost. So I actually also communicate with different proctoring surveys before, but it's quite expensive. So minimum charge is $4 and it can be up to 10 or 20 US dollars per student per test. So it's quite difficult. And of course, there are various things we have to consider for proctoring. So when we design our own proctoring, or when we go for third parties, we also have various things to think about. So of course, the major concern is the security. Ensure there's no contract cheating. They don't support each other. Students don't support each other during assessments. Don't bring some extra forbidden acts for the assessments. But we also have to take care about the privacy. Whether students are protect their own computer, their own computer will not be surveyed by those softwares. Environment will not be surveyed too much. And there are also different things. So convenience, technical issues, surface cost, staff cost, infrastructure costs, etc. So in particular, so if I believe for most teachers in university and high schools, will go for using Zoom or some other tools for proctoring, and we have to create lots of Zoom sessions, etc. So those are done by administrators, and we always have the administrators that also admin staff, support staff, that it takes some time. So that's why there are lots of things that we have to think about, and of course technical issues, etc. So that's why in Hong Kong U we propose ONEX system is a centralized proctor surveys. You can see from this page, this is actually the main screen, main Proctored page. So talking about for each, when students get into the course, they will find a Zoom session. They can switch on the Zoom session, and for Zoom session for going into the invigilation session, and they can download exam paper and then the password. So they can download the exam paper first and then get the password later on when the exam starts, and they can get the password and then unlock the paper and then upload the answer. So this is actually not a very high-tech thing. So it's just a Zoom session file management system. The good thing is all these Zoom sessions are configured by computers. So they don't need to, for support staff, they don't need to create all those Zoom sessions by themselves, or managed by ITS. And we also provide trainings. So teach the teachers, administrators, and everybody how to use the system. So you can click the link for more videos. So how can we train students to make those to conduct those projects? And of course, we also for this semester we also look for something else. So I believe For other universities, they actually tried the lockdown browser before, but Hong Kong U is almost the first time to try the lockdown browser. So why we want to try lockdown browser is because right now it's a by default functionalities in Moodle. So that's why we are the first time to try. Yes, a bit late, but it's still okay. Yeah. So we try in some mathematics courses, and actually the response is quite positive. Students actually prefer to have SEP, this kind of lockdown browser for assessment, for portrait or some more secure assessment. In Windows, in PC is okay, but in Mac there are some technical issues, and also there are also some crash, etc. So makes the computer feel actually the fan become very fast, etc. Very noise, etc. But in general, most students appreciate the effort. So if you are colleagues in Hong Kong U, so feel free to contact us to think about using lockdown browser for your maybe midterm tests, etc. And we have tried this in 2 courses in mathematics department already. And we also talk about self-proctoring. So we also explore something else. So whether we can have some things in between, so not a centralized system, but we can provide some extra flexibility and more flexibility and more secure, but with some other alternatives. So that's why we did a study before and proposed a approach is so-called self-proctoring. So the principle or the idea is actually we shift this proctoring responsibility to students. So they have to switch on their own Zoom session and then conduct the assessments, of course with the timestamp, and then switch off the Zoom, and then whole recording will be located maybe local computer or on cloud, and then can submit afterwards. So whole process will be done by the student, and then this actually help. That means there will be no infiltration during the test. So it saves some people, but we still have to provide some chat room, technical support through chat room, and to answer some students' technical questions. Of course, there will be some training before, and you have to go for some demo tests, etc. Students are more prepared, and then they go for the examination, the proctored assessment. Yeah. So the idea is just asking students to switch on their Zoom cloud recording, and then we use that for if we have to go for infiltration afterwards, and we use that recording for infiltration. The nice thing is we can also record the screen through the screen sharing. So everything they did on the computer as well as the environment all can be recorded and can be checked later on. Of course, there are different issues. So people were asking, oh, there are still some other ways to, for example, dual screen or some other ways that can still do some cheating. But we try our best to balance between convenience and complexity and security. So we have make to have a balance or trade-off. So this is the self-proctoring mechanism. We tried this. We also did an analysis. So this is one of the paper we published soon. We study, we go for 600 students and then 860 sessions, and then we collect 137 surveys, and then talk about whether they feel there is a benefit or there are costs, etc. So of course, there are a number of students feel it's more convenient. They can stay at home, so they don't need to travel, in particular in this difficult time. And some of them also mentioned they prefer to type. So because they think and type in their office later on in the future, or in their assignments, or by typing. So if they go for examinations, they can type, will be also favorable. And of course, there are also some teachers mentioned, well, marking assignment digitally will be very helpful. But of course, there are also some issues. So the problem is complication. So unexpected technical issues. So if we introduce more infiltration mechanism, so there will be more unexpected issues. So this is understand. But also we are talking about some of the things that can be done by infiltrator in the past. All these have to be done by students right now, so they will feel more nervous. Now, of course, we also have a conclusion that so no matter the format of remote assessment, self-proctored or not, students still have to do extra preparation work. So different from in-hall exam, they have to do extra things. So matter switching on Zoom, tap the screen sharing, etc. Everything they need extra, have to do extra work, so that's why they will feel extra nervous, and then which makes them not in a good performance. So we did the analysis, and then we did in the law faculty, engineering faculty, and then when we try in several courses, and in the first semester, and we deploy in the second semester last year. So some of the functions actually is a central deployment by the older system. Yes, in particular is the screen recording surface. Screen recording part. So of course with some tailor-made, and those also create some extra burden, but that's the things we have to resolve. But this is quite interesting because this project originally is just a TBG, so it's a cost level, but later on it becomes a bottom-up development initiative for the whole university. So this is one of the interesting topics. And then of course there are some limitations. So some technical issues, in particular, we can't support students in their home. So that's why if their device has some issues, we can't help. And that's why in Hong Kong, although we go for proctoring, remote proctoring, but we also allow students coming back to campus use the computer facilities in Hong Kong to conduct the product assessment. And of course, it's also like last one, it's difficult to measure the effectiveness of self-proctoring because students will not report that whether they are cheating or not. So so that's why it's also it's quite difficult to measure whether we can provide students cheating or not, because they will not report. And of course, the next thing is about the future. We actually, after trying the remote or self-product assessment, so actually law school colleagues actually approach us, and then we start a new TBG this year. So it's called computer-based assessment. So we are not talking about remote assessment, but asking students to bring your own device or using the computers in the computer lab to do the assessments. So students can type instead of write. So they can learn, they can think so they can learn, they can type or think just in normal ways, because when they're working on assignments or work in the future, they will type instead of write. So that's why they can have the same experience for us for the examination. So that's the things that we are trying. We want to try this year. So no matter they come back to computer lab and they do the work, or they stay in the examination hall, but they use their own computer device to do the examination. So these are some things we will explore this year. And of course, the problem in the examination hall is whether we can provide enough power plugs and various of things. For example, in Look Hall, we can cater 300 people or 200 people, but we don't have 200 power plugs for them. So we have to, and also Wi-Fi support. So there are lots of things that we have to handle and resolve. Hopefully, through this project, we can find out or resolve all the issues. And later on, if it's okay, we can scale to more courses or more faculties. So just to let you know, actually for IELTS and for TOEFL, they already implement the computer-based assessment already. And this will be the trend for also in the future, no matter in K-12 or in higher education. Yeah. So that's what I want to share. So I just focus on proctored examination or proctored assessments, but there will be some other alternatives or mentioned by colleagues from other universities. So that's what I want to share. So if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat room, and then we can respond. We can talk together, discuss together during the round table discussion. Okay, so thanks all. And then the next one will be Eric. Yeah.
Thank you, Leon. Let me just move mine. Can you see my presentation okay?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Hi, I'm Darren. I'm an SEDO from PolyU's Educational Development Centre. I'm going to be speaking about invigilated assessment at PolyU in the times of a pandemic. I've got some overlap with what Leon said. I can actually respond to a couple of things Leon has said as well, so we can get some conversation going throughout the presentations as well. And I'm looking forward to the roundtable part at the end, which may be more valuable than my actual presentation, so that I can learn from my co-presenters and from the colleagues here today as well. I'm going to just cover three things in my short presentation. What the research suggests about online exams, I'm going to speak about relevant e-assessment projects that we're working on at PolyU. And then I'll finish up, just as Leon did, with the proctoring experiences that we've had and guidelines that we mentioned at PolyU. First of all, looking at the research, this is a meta-analysis done in 2020. Just 4 key points, I think, to take away from here, which have been replicated in our experience at PolyU. So the first is that students prefer online examinations to paper-based exams. There's a 68% or 69% preference for online versus paper-based. I'm not sure if it's connected with the second point, which says that students believe online examination allows them, oh, sorry, the third one is maybe the amusing one. Let me jump to that now. The majority of students perceive that online examination environment makes it easier to cheat. So at the same time, students prefer an online exam environment. But from my third point, they recognize that they feel it makes it easier to cheat. If I go back up to the second point, students believe that online examination allows a more authentic assessment experience. Leon has kind of touched on this before in his presentation as well. But I mean, first of all, easier for students to type than it is write. So I think that's going to be one of the drivers here. Students prefer to type rather than write. And in an accounting exam, for example, where students can actually carry out calculations using an Excel spreadsheet, it can be a more authentic experience than trying to convert that in a face-to-face experience. Now, of course, face-to-face experiences can leverage online as well and can certainly leverage computers. At PolyU, we've had limited bring your own device sessions where we've been using lockdown browsers, but this happened before the actual pandemic struck. So we had limited experience with departments that called us up and we supported them specifically, so not a university-wide process. I have to say we had very positive feedback for these. So this is something that I hope we can look for more in the future when face-to-face is allowed, that an exam can be invigilated face-to-face, but it's not paper. Students bring their own devices, which are checked beforehand. They can use a tool like Lockdown Browser, and they can get a more authentic experience than they perhaps would have had otherwise. The final point on this slide, academics reported that their biggest concern is the potential for cheating. So academic integrity is the key concern. And also the reliability of the technology is the second most critical concern of academic staff. I'll later be sharing with you just a brief overview of what PolyU teachers said about their online exam experiences. So I'm currently leading 2 projects looking at e-assessment at PolyU. The first one, the short title is E-Assessment Solutions at PolyU, which is a 2-year TDG initiative done by EDC with academics. And the main deliverables are a repository of e-assessment approaches, tools, and strategies for both formative and summative. And from starting that exam, doing the literature review, that project, doing the literature review, doing the benchmarking, we found 2 main threads to explore. One is online proctored examinations, which is project background 2. I'll speak to that in a minute. And that's the one that connects directly with the substance of today's webinar. But also the second point was alternative forms of e-assessment, such as continuous assessment, project work, presentations, and so on. So for this particular project, we decided to spin out the online proctored part, which I'll talk about in a minute. And this project now focuses on the alternative online assessments that I outlined. So we're basically working at the moment with teachers, getting examples from them, doing individual webinars on their own assessment approaches. We're combining all of their approaches, and we will be compiling all this and issuing it on one of our websites later at the end of the project to give teachers guidelines so that they can increase their repertoire of assessment to include traditional and non-traditional. And I've put at the end, hopefully this can lead to a collaborative online session between the colleagues that we have here. So today's focus is online proctored assessment. Hopefully we can do a combined workshop. I haven't mentioned this to the other team members here, but hopefully we can do a future webinar where we focus on these alternative processes as well. I feel that there's a big appetite amongst academics for not just online proctored, but alternative forms of assessment. And for that alternative forms of assessment project, we've basically realized that the SAMA model, so moving up from substitution, augmentation, modification, redefinition as the height, is actually a good model for clarifying e-assessment interventions. If you look at the bottom, substitution, I guess that's a student who did a paper-based exam face-to-face with invigilators, now does it online with pen and paper with online invigilators. So it's just a direct exchange. The next one, augmentation, where the tech acts as a direct tool with functional improvement. That, as I said, could be the exam where it's an online proctored exam and somebody is typing rather than writing, which is a very small benefit, or the increased benefit of, as I said, the accounting and finance students who might be able to work through worksheets, Excel-based worksheets, to give it a more authentic feel. Both of these levels we've covered in our assessments at PolyU. The third level, modification, the task allows for significant task redesign. I've worked with teachers who've done this as well. So what was previously a face-to-face presentation becomes an online exercise with maybe a synchronous presentation, or maybe a synchronous presentation which is playing a pre-recorded video and includes an asynchronous part as well via a discussion forum or Flipgrid or something like that, where Q&A are dealt with. So one assessment has kind of morphed into, I would argue, a better assessment, and it's significantly different from the previous one, but we would argue better. Our teachers said they got good feedback. The fourth category of redefinition, where tech is allowing for new tasks that were previously inconceivable. I don't think any of the assessments I've worked on are at that level, but that would be a question of time. So I'd be happy to hear about those as well. The second project is more directly related to today's workshop, which is a VTL funded initiative, looking at online proctored assessment and academic integrity. So this is considering commercial proctoring solutions. As I will later tell you, at PolyU, we're not using commercial proctoring solutions. We are using a homegrown proctoring invigilation solution. But our project is to simultaneously look at the commercial versions to see what's around, what's good, and what would be ideal for PolyU. If you look at the final main bullet point, we basically went through the 9 most used proctoring solutions as recommended by EDUCAUSE. And we invited all of the vendors to give us a 1-hour demonstration, and we completed a checklist. So this is EDC colleagues plus 4 academics we have on our project. And looking at the basic requirements that we had previously established, we've chosen 4: responders, honor look, examus, and proctor exam. And these are the 4 that we're going to trial a little bit in much more depth, not a little bit more depth, much more depth starting now. And 2 areas of concern were revealed during our initial reviews. The teachers graded them as we'd agree on a form that we pre-agreed. But extra concern came out in 2 areas: the usage of a second camera or device, and most of the commercial proctoring solutions only use 1 device. The majority only use 1 device. And in our homegrown system, we've used more than 1 device. As you know, Zoom is capable of carrying more than 1 video feed. So that's been a concern for our academics, that the majority of products of the 9 only use 1 device. And that device generally is the webcam at the front. And they encourage the students maybe to pick up the computer, would be difficult with my iMac, move it around the room to do an environment scan, but it's generally 1 device that they use. And for some of our teachers, it's moving them way too far out of their comfort zone that there can only be 1. The second involves proctoring sessions, the actual invigilators. 2 broad areas, and sometimes the companies use a combination of both, which is AI proctoring and real people proctoring. And with the AI proctoring, they flag instances of potential cheating, and you look back at a video, you look back at the flags, you confirm whether there was cheating or not. So that's the way the AI does it. Human proctoring, we can imagine how that does it. A proctor watches between 1 and however many students at the same time doing an exam and can communicate them and flag any problems. Our PolyU colleagues said that they would never want to pass the responsibility over entirely to a set of invigilators that are not from PolyU, and they would appreciate the chance to actually participate in the invigilation. And again, the majority of the commercial solutions did not involve the possibility of being able to do that. They would not allow our staff. So in the end, of the 4 that we've shortlisted, we bumped up a couple because they did actually allow this possibility, which was considered important by PolyU colleagues. So our proctoring experience at PolyU, this started at the end of semester 2, 2019-2020. So this is the first wave of the pandemic, remote education, and we had to go in some ways for remote assessment as well. So PolyU set up a homegrown system, which was Blackboard assignment for delivering the exam. or test, and Zoom as the monitoring invigilation guide. And there was a potential to add a handwritten element if necessary, and some of the exams required that. We surveyed teachers after each cohort, and we continue to survey teachers after each cohort that happens to get their feedback. What were the suggestions they would like to make as to how the system should be improved, and so on. So some thoughts on the process. So ITS, Academic Registrar, and ourselves, EDC, we produced a suggested system, we produced guidelines, we produced training. My goodness, EDC even made a self-access Blackboard module for teachers to go through before setting an online proctored exam. We had documents, workshops, webinars, the full caboodle, as you would imagine. Here's the good news. From the feedback, the vast majority of teachers reported that ultimately the process ran smoothly. And we were very happy to hear that. There were incidents, but incidents happen. Overall, the process was considered smooth. And with each subsequent cohort, so we've had 4 cohorts of online proctored exams, online invigilated exams at PolyU now. Smaller last summer because it was freer for students to actually come face-to-face, but there were still some courses that did it. Each subsequent cohort reports smoother running, fewer problems. We ran a discourse analysis on the feedback, and from the very first cohort, the main area that we identified was student mishaps, incidents, and accidents issues. So this is when it was all very new to everybody, to us, to the administrators, to the teachers, and the students. However, as we've moved on, that's kind of dropped down and dropped off the scale. So now there are not so many student mishaps. There are not so many incidents. There are not accidents. It's much more under control. It's much more established. And QA and academic integrity has become the key worry of teachers. So even with all these invigilation processes in practice and writing an appropriate test or exam, there's still a fear about academic integrity. We've made various changes. I'll highlight the top 3 as a result. So this is a fluid process. Each cohort of exams, each semester, we update the process. So the key changes, we've increased the invigilator to student ratio because some of the departments have said this is just too burdensome. 1 to 15 students was the lowest ratio we had. We're higher than that now. Increased scheduled time for ID check-in. I mean, we advise students to take a selfie photo and have everything prepared, but these things take time, especially if you've got a group of 10, 15, 20 students that you're responsible for. So I think the average department now gets students in about 45 minutes ahead of the exam to go through all the checking that the invigilator does in the Zoom room, one by one, and involves a selfie, which is posted in advance, which gets the authorization so that we know this is the real student who's supposed to be doing it. And then the selfie has to match with the ID card that the student shows, which also has to match with the face. So there's like triangulation there that it's actually the right student doing the exam. And the reduction in number of devices needed by students. The first time we did it, there was a maximum of 3 devices possibly needed for students, which was harsh. We had 2 cameras monitoring the students. And there was the possibility that if the students did their exam on paper, they had to use a 3rd device to actually take a photograph and then upload a photograph of the paper, the exam script, and then upload that, which was considered too demanding, and I agree. So my final slide, I'll talk about where we are now with current proctoring guidelines or invigilation. I keep flipping between the words, proctoring and invigilation, forgive me, I use them interchangeably. We've just released our announcement to teachers this semester for the online proctored exams. Immediately, departments got back in touch with us, or AR are the main lead on this. Immediately, departments got back in touch with us and said, increase the ratio. It's too onerous. It's too onerous. So we've increased the ratio. We've allowed more students per invigilator. I'll get to that one in a minute. Teachers, as Leon suggested, are encouraged to pursue alternative arrangements before resorting to online proctored exams. And EDC and other departments in the university support PolyU teachers with this. So continuous assessment, take home, project work, all of these things are encouraged before teachers resort to using online invigilated exams. However, for those who must use online invigilated exams, we have a guidelines list from AR, EDC, and ITS. We have training from EDC and ITS, and it points to the following. So Zoom is still used as the monitoring device, the individual invigilation device, but this can be embedded either within Blackboard or Teams. And in this context, both Blackboard and Teams operate as an LMS, as a VLE. It's not using Teams for the video aspect, it's using Teams for the delivery aspect, for document sharing, and so on and so forth. So Teams or Blackboard plus Zoom as the camera. Blackboard's assignment is suggested as the standard tool, whether it's to set up quiz type assessments or exam type, essay type assessments. Students join the session beforehand, as I said, for the ID check. The time can be decided by departments. I believe 30 minutes is the minimum that we suggest. And I also understand that most departments go for longer than that because they've had bad experiences in the past. Our suggested invigilation ratio at the moment is 1 per 25 students. So this is a teacher, an invigilator looking at a Zoom room with 25 students on there. There are problems with this, of course. So just to give one brief anecdote, Leon said that students have been allowed back on campus to do these exams even during the time of pandemic. This has been true at PolyU as well. So I think the majority of our students have been doing it at home, but students who have to do it on campus have been doing it on campus. And one invigilator noticed that he recognized the room and saw that 3 of the students in his room were actually, 3 of the students in his Zoom room were actually in the same physical room on campus, or this was his fear. So he got another teacher to look at the camera, ran over, and he discovered multiple students in the same room together, all sharing ideas. So he discovered a little bit of cheating going on there just because he recognized the on-campus setting. One webcam is used, and this is an external webcam. So we are not recommending the use of the webcam that I have stuck in my screen here. We're going for an external webcam that has a cable and allows students to have kind of a side view. So that's what we're using. It's kind of a side view of student that takes in a little bit of the screen and a little bit of the environment. We've not asked students to do the scan. I think we should, but we haven't asked students to do that. We've purchased a bucket load of these cameras, and these are available for students to borrow as well. So thankfully, we're trying to reduce the burden on students. An extra device is sometimes necessary. So we still have the extra device if a student wants to do it on pen and paper. So what happens is a photograph is taken and that's then submitted. And this action is performed in front of the invigilator. There must be a full mock exam beforehand to identify any potential problems. I say mock exam, a practice exam. So without fail, you must get the students and the teachers and the invigilators to practice the exam first. And our ongoing support from AR, ITS, and EDC suggests evidence that, surprise, surprise, as teachers and students become familiar with the process, there are fewer issues in terms of technical issues, procedural issues. But the issues surrounding academic integrity remain, and the fears about academic integrity still remain. I work with some teachers who absolutely, fully, 100% will not use online invigilation because they say they simply do not trust it. And these are just a couple of references. So thank you very much. That was my presentation. And I look forward to discussing with you all in the round table. Thanks, Leon.
Well, thank you, Darren. Let me share my screen here.
Yeah, let me hand over to Crusher, Dr. Crusher One from CityU.
Well, hello, everyone. It's Crusher from CityU. I lead a small team supporting e-learning at CityU. I hope you see my my screen here. Let me try to find my pointer. Just a sec. Okay, sorry, I couldn't find my pointer, but anyway, let me start talking here. So I'm trying to share the situation at CityU, and since the pandemic, we have been running exam online as other institution, and as you can see, it's very similar to Hong Kong U or PolyU or Chinese U. So most of the students attempt the exam remotely. At CityU in particular, the solution is to use our learning management system, Canvas. Of course, it's only the recommendation. We never force colleagues to use one system for examination. So basically, it's still their choice. But of course, we have to set up all the recommendation. And two-device proctoring is required. I would like to let you know that we never provide or produce the guidelines. The Provost Office produced the guideline, and we kind of read the guideline, try to provide a solution so colleagues the teachers can go through the exam according to the guidelines. Okay, so in a typical situation, the Zoom serve as the communication and also invigilation tool, which is not ideal because basically Zoom allow communication with individuals. In a proctoring situation, you kind of don't want the student to communicate with each other. Of course, I mean, there's always students living in a condition that not quite suitable for them to carry out the or attempt the examination at home. So for those needing some space, they are allowed to go to the campus for the examination. But of course, we still want someone, a staff member, to do the invigilation. So that's kind of the situation. Okay, let me share a bit about the technical solution. At CityU, we were kind of lucky because a long time ago, well before the pandemic, the law school somehow liked the idea of having students to attempt examination on the system. So they type instead of write. And with that, they also need a lockdown browser to make sure students don't visit different websites during the examination. Of course, at that point, those law students, mostly PCLL, they were on campus inside computer rooms using the computers at the university to attempt the examination on our system, Canvas, using Respondus lockdown browser. So that was the situation. That helped us to learn the behavior of the tools better. So that's what we are showing here in terms of using the quizzes function inside the learning management system. Of course, you can ask multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks, calculation essay, that's the package. And with the Respondus lockdown browser, one can enable the Respondus monitor, the AI invigilation solution, which both Darren and Leon has mentioned. So that's one side of the story, but that may not fit in very well if students need to draw diagrams, write equations. Yes, the system allows students to type in an equation, but I think it takes much more time to type an equation in comparison to write an equation. So that's still examination that students still write on a paper. And at the end, they take photos, just like Darren was saying. And we had to suggest them to use Microsoft Office Lens to consolidate all those photos into one single PDF file for submission. And for those with essay type answers, they can still use plagiarism scanning, which is turned in at CityU. So that's kind of the recommended solution, either the quiz solution or the assignment tool inside the learning management system. And of course, you have heard about the mock exam. Since there's no one-size-fits-all for the examination at CityU, that means the technical side and the experience of attempting an exam could be quite different from exam to exam. That's why we always recommend colleagues to run a mock with the student. So not only the student has the experience, but also the teacher know where problem can arise and learn with the student during the mock and then refine the procedures, make sure there's no surprise in the real one. So that's the recommendation. But of course, that's only a recommendation. Not many colleagues run a mock. That's according to my understanding. Of course, we do not have figures in terms of the mock. You have heard a lot about two-device approach. So that's kind of the situation being expected. So on one side, student attempting the exam on a notebook computer, which there should be a webcam pointing to the student from the front. And then at sideway, there should be another device, usually the student's smartphone, taking the video about the examination environment. So that's kind of the two device. In the typical situation, it would be student will be joining Zoom here on device 1 and also joining Zoom on device 2. Yes, it's a bit hard to manage by the teachers. So of course, alternatively, student attempt on device 1 with quizzes function, and then the responders monitor is enabled. So recording will be taken from the device 1, and for device 2, it will still be Zoom. So it still carry out the communication and individualization task at the time. Okay, so we have talked a lot about AI monitoring, what exactly it looks like. This is kind of a sample report from responders. So remember, all this is delayed. Delayed mean in real time, responders do not provide true video what the students are doing. Is after the exam, the recording will go through an AI engine, and the AI would try to see if the student's face is continuously showing on the screen, or the student kind of missing, or there are more than one face on the video. And it would try to flag the teacher where to look at with thumbnails. So in principle, the teacher doesn't have to go through hours of recording. He or she simply look at the flagged area and see if they need to take certain action afterward. According to our understanding, some teachers even don't bother to watch the videos. Is used, I mean, the response monitor was used mainly as a deterrent instead of truly a tool to monitor everything. And after all, is teacher's choice. We just give recommendations. We don't force them to do this or that. More importantly, about some of the observation in the last 2 years, basically, besides the previous semester, which we had the luxury to conduct examination face-to-face, most of the examinations within the 2 years, these 2 years were online. And the thing is, usually what we saw was colleagues were transferred paper-based examination to online. So it's just a transfer. It's not a redesign, basically similar kind of setting. Of course, in some situation, as Darren and Leon also mentioned, there could be change from closed book examinations to open book ones. And the interesting thing is how students interpret open book examinations. Some of them think that, oh, it's an open book examination, it's okay for me to search the web, which is kind of funny, but anyway. In some cases, colleagues will increase the difficulty and quantity of questions, kind of make sure students cannot finish it within the 3-hour window. Good or bad, I don't know. Of course, we have mentioned the online proctoring to avoid cheating. It's there, but is it really effective? The student may need to go to the washroom for 5 minutes and missing from the video. So how do you react to that? There's also strong reliance on the technical solution. In a sense, there's no plan B if the technology fails for one student or all students. Probably there's a makeup exam. It's hard to avoid that. We also face a lot of investigations after examination. Colleagues would call us and say, could you check on this student at this time? They want to know if we can see a lot of things through the system log. We usually can see something, but then is that something sufficient to show the student were doing something wrong? I don't know. I should say that in most cases, what we found was not very conclusive. Okay. And also that's still pending for transformation of assessment. Could we just do without the good old style examination. And I can see that some colleagues has moving in that direction. For example, increasing the weight of continuous assessment. So we don't rely on one single examination at the end that much. Adoption of alternative assessment, which we will hear from Paul afterwards. We really want colleagues to focus on higher level learning outcomes, which is not simply reproducing something, but be more creative. So in that case, you don't lock them in an environment for a 3-hour exam. You want them to present something, be creative, be different. Authentic assessment, for example, I still co-teach a course called Teaching University First Step to the research student. The final assessment is not an examination. They need to produce a educational video to show us they can teach. So that's kind of the authentic assessment I'm talking about. Make sure students do something instead of force them to providing answers in a 3-hour window. How about could design questions with your student in a kind of project-based study? Eventually, my suggestion is try to use IT solutions, but try to be flexible. So even the solution may not be available at the time, there should be some alternative that we can take care of the assessment. Now it's kind of, it works good. If it doesn't work, we are in deep trouble. And also, we talk a lot about summative assessment, because usually final exam is a summative assessment. You don't give feedback to students. But could we change all that and make even the final assessment both summative and formative? Well, I think that supports students learning better. I try to make this as brief as possible. Currently, we face some challenges. The efforts to officially change the course assessment methods is not simple. There's department, college, university level you have to go through. Also, the support from senior management. My understanding is senior management wants examination. That's what they feel. And that also comes partially from the accreditation body, which you have heard from Darren and Leon also. And of course, all that comes from the society, kind of thinking that exam should be a better method to assess our students summatively. Is it really true? And the human resources issue, of course, once you go to alternative assessment, either you can get AI to help to assess all the students, or you may take a lot more time to mark your students. I mean, that's quite time and human resources consuming. And eventually, we hope all these changes could lead to more alignment of outcome-based teaching and learning. I mean, so far to me, examination doesn't work with outcome-based very well because of the methods of asking students to respond. It is kind of old-fashioned. So that's all I have. I know the time is running out, so let me stop sharing now and get the floor to Paul.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Thank you. So I would say what I'm going to, what I plan to talk about are all covered already. So I'll make it very brief. My way to do it is to talk about what in Chinese U, what we have been doing to support our teachers to overcome the challenge this year, the e-assessment challenge is this year. So I'll talk about what we have done and then in this structure. Okay, sorry for the white font, but anyway, Forget the page. I'll explain what we have done. We have run through a number of workshops, a series of workshops, actually 3 on 3 different themes. That's number one thing we do. And then the second thing is that we have a lot of Q&A sections, one-to-one consultation sections for teachers who have more specific problems, and they can always find us. So we have a lot of small meetings, individual meetings after the workshops. So 3 workshops and then a lot of consultations. And then what we do is that we are in very soon, I think 1 week or 2 weeks later, we will arrange, we have invited a number of teachers who have been more kind of pioneers, and they will have online workshops and talk about what they have done to share their personal advice to our teachers, so that they have a lot of information and a lot of experience from others before they plan for their year examination this year. So that's workshop, consultation, and then sharing. I think there's 3 steps what we have done. And in general, I think what I would say after hearing Leon, Crusher, and Darren, what happened in Chinese U, maybe, if I'm correct, is that we have a more shopping model. So we don't have one very strong recommendation. Instead, in the workshops, in the consultations, and even in the sharing sections, we provide a wide range of possibilities and let teachers shop for themselves. What our role is to provide a lot of possibilities, a lot of things you can try, tell them the advantages and disadvantages, and they can do whatever they want there. So it's a bit more open-ended, I think, on our side. So let's talk about it in the workshop 1. Even though we have this open-ended approach, but I would say we have a hidden agenda. And that is in workshop number 1. The hidden agenda is we want to minimize the numbers of proctored exam. Because as you have heard already, doing a really good quality proctored exam is not easy. You need a very good software. You need a lot of manpower, human resources, invigilators, and you need a lot of skills, not only teacher skills, student skills as well. And also it is quite difficult still, even with AI, to spot students cheating. They have all their clever ideas to cheat. So it is quite, so therefore our hidden agenda, even though we are quite open and teachers can select what they want, our hidden agenda still is to persuade as many teachers as possible to move to alternative assessment, like Crusher talked about. And also of good reasons. Actually, Crusher talked about that already, because in a traditional exam, proctored exam, it may not fit the new assessment concepts. We want assessment is not only to give students marks. Like in the PowerPoint here, assessment can achieve many other good purposes as well. For example, assessment for learning, instead of only ranking students, it is a good learning experience for students as well. So our workshop number 1 is to ask teachers to rethink whether they really need traditional exam and proctored exam. Can they take this opportunity to modify, like Darren said, modify or even redefine their examination, make use of this opportunity. These are the concepts we talk about in workshop 1. We also go through validity, reliability, and we want to emphasize these concepts are also valid in online exam. It's not only something important in traditional exam. In online exam, you need to make your exam reliable, and that's why ported exam can be not that reliable if you don't have the manpower and the skills. So why not consider alternative assessment and validity? Pressure talked about that already. So alternative assessment can be very valid if you have higher learning outcomes in your courses, or you want critical thinking, right? You want real students solving real problems. They are not that valid in traditional exam. Why not consider things like open book exam? These are some possible alternative assessment ideas. We try to sell our teachers these ideas in workshop number 1. Open book exam. How about students' presentation online? How about they make their own website? They make students' portfolio. How about doing projects? How about writing papers? How about give them a case studies and they write up a case report? Things like that. They are all good and valid possibilities, and we sell them in workshop number 1. And I hope we can be successful in. But Pressure talks about the difficulty as well, because the top management may not like this idea. Accreditation bodies may not like this idea. But anyway, this is what we try to do. But in workshop number 2, we know some teachers still need to do the ported exam because of like top management insistence, many other reasons. And in workshop number 2, we talk about if you really need to do this, we have a number of ideas, but it is a shopping mode, right? We give them as many ideas as possible. For example, you can, if you don't want to do it to porter it live, you can have the lockdown browser, and then you do not need to have live portering. If you want live portering, we try to sell them Zoom, like what Darren has said. We can have Zoom. Actually, Pressure do that as well. Actually, Leon will do that as well. Everybody use Zoom if you want to do live portering. Together with any other quiz engines, like we have the one in Blackboard, or some teachers use other stuff together with Zoom. Or if you have paper-based, you still want students to write on papers, we provide them with some other ideas. How about Zoom? Have the camera look at point at the table and students draw while the invigilator looks at what the students is doing on the table, things like that. That's our workshop number 2, and our standard, like Pressure, our standard setup is 2 cameras. The one in front, the fixed one on the computer, but we also suggest another one a bit sideways, but we hope that one also capture the screen as well. So a bit different from Pressure's photos. So because we also want to check what, if possible, whether this, even with lockdown browser, sometimes students can do some very funny thing on the screen. So it will be our best camera angles. But I can tell you, last year it didn't work because a lot of the teachers complain if they do it, the students on the Zoom, they can see each other's screens. And that means they can, if they have a very high resolution, somehow they can copy from what others are doing on the screen. But this year, it can be better because we have a focus mode. Zoom has a focus mode. So students only, the teacher can see everybody, but students only see themselves. They can't see their their classmates. So this year we want to try selling this idea, right? Students have the second camera shooting at the screen. That because last year, if you don't, last year we teachers do not dare to ask students to capture the screen. So it will be camera angle 1 and camera angle 2. But it's a lot of cheating opportunities if you have only these two angles. So you see, actually what Judy, some of you know this lady, right? Actually what's in front of Judy is real time, is something that horrible. Okay, so you need a better camera angle to capture what Judy is doing. Judy is cheating with nine computers. Okay, so okay, and also in workshop number 2, we also provide some tips about apart from technical thing and apart from camera, we also like pressure, and a lot of you talk about already. So we suggest teachers have some mock exam experience before doing it for real. Give students a very clear guideline, how much time they need to go there earlier, what they need to prepare beforehand, what if they want to go to toilet, things like that. A long instructions should be provided to students. And then we also suggest teachers to have a copyright statement on the exam paper, because some students, we know some students may somehow capture the exam paper. And then after the exam, they will share the examination paper on some platform. So having a copyright statement is a good way to prevent a very public sharing of the examination paper. As I said, focus mode this year helps a bit, so we want teachers to use it. And then invigilation is difficult. So 1 to 25, I don't think we have that number. We still want to insist a smaller number, 1 to 16 perhaps, and we want invigilators to have a very big screen. Also, we also advise not only recruit invigilators. If you have an exam, also you need to consider other roles of support, other roles of helpers. You have a number of invigilators, you yourself is the examination, you are the teacher, okay? But still you may need 1 to 2 other helpers who will help to make calls to students. Some students disappear, and you need another helper to have one-to-one contact. You may have you also need to have a list of students' phone number beforehand as well. So there are a lot of make sure our teachers have a lot of helpers, invigilators, the technical helpers, as well as himself. And also a contingency plan, as Crusher talked about, mock-up exam is very likely a contingency plan. So in workshop number 3, then we go through a lot of software with our teachers to help them shop, right? Of course, we want them, we want them to do alternative assessment. But if they insist, we want to help them understand these possibilities, right? And we somehow, our IT center, they somehow support teachers use any of these. So if they want further details, they have the one-to-one consultation later on. So a lot of you mentioned, you have mentioned many of these already. So Very Guy perhaps is a different one. Very Guy, I think it is the plagiarism check engine we use. So if you, some of our, especially for students who write essays, some teachers want the students also submit the essay to Very Guy to help check whether any copying is involved. So these are the things teachers may need to do their online exam. And they shop here in workshop number 3. And then apart from, and then we have consultations. And lastly, as I said, we will have some sharing. We invited teachers who have pioneered doing various kinds of online assessment, including the alternative assessments, as well as the Proctored assessment. We will do it, yes, 24th of March. We have invited teachers not only from Chinese U, and therefore it is an open workshop. So any of you, if you are interested, you can come and listen to what teachers have actually done and their personal advice on the 24th, 2 to 3:30. I think the link is there. Yes. Okay. That's what I want to cover. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks, Paul, for sharing. So we still have several minutes for the discussion. So actually, there are several questions asking about actually also on plagiarism. There are several ways of plagiarism, so contract cheating, peer support, forbidden acts, etc. So I know if Paul, Krisha, Darren, do you have any ideas on how to solve these issues?
Well, frankly, those are very good questions, and I don't think we have a very effective way to deal with it. Of course, we have ways to deal with it, but then at the bottom line, I don't think any one of the solutions can eliminate all these problems. That's my view.
I agree with Krisha. I think one thing that is interesting is sometimes I've talked about 2 projects I'm doing. I've said that they're quite different. One's looking at alternative solutions. One is looking at proctored solutions. I think maybe a suggestion is to come together with both of them, to unite them. What I mean by that is we had a teacher that's doing only open book, and this is a teacher who's very opposed to online invigilated exams. But he mentioned some techniques that he uses in the open book exam. So like similar exam structure, but different variables so that students actually get a different exam to their classmates. So to combine something like that with the online individuated world, I think would be successful. So let's not feel that because it's online invigilated, it has to be everybody doing the same exam. It doesn't. And Polly, you and I believe at your institutions as well, we use online invigilated for open book exams and closed book exams. So this idea of perhaps blending the assessment approaches, it's not one size fits all, it's not one exam for everybody. If you're having different exams for every student, then I presume the ability to plagiarize is reduced, and you can't get quick online help either necessarily, is certainly not from your group.
I also echo what Krisha and Darren mentioned. So I heard from, for example, in Berkeley and also in a case in UHK. So they are statistics teachers actually. So that's why they use programming to change some parameters in the question. So that means every student will answer the similar question type, but with different parameters, and then the answers will be different. So I heard actually in Hong Kong U, in UHK, in Berkeley, there are teachers in particular statistics department, they did something like this. So that means I remember in UHK, he's talking about creating 100 or 200 questions and each question is different, and for students. And of course, using question base or all those things can also help. Yeah. So introduce more variety, increase the cost of cheating or communications. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I also heard of stories that are relatively more successful, but for those stories, they spend a lot of effort, a big team of invigilators. And then like Leon said, they also have different question papers for different students. So a lot of effort, and then you might have a better chance.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so I think is if we can have more teaching support staff and more invigilators and more designs, of course, this kind of cheating will be, the chance of cheating will be minimized. But again, we have to do extra work. So that's something teachers also have to think about.
I think this work has to be done at the beginning of the course as well, rather than what we've been doing a lot of the time is in emergency response, and we've actually been trying to change assessments halfway through a course. And as we know, assessment drives education. So we're giving students maybe one target and then we're moving the target a little bit. So I think we need to plan in advance assessment procedures that are so designed that the key to them is avoiding plagiarism. So it doesn't really matter in the end whether it's done face-to-face or in an online proctored environment. So yeah, it's time consuming and it involves a change, but making these decisions as far as possible before the course actually starts rather than halfway through the course.
Yeah. Okay, so it's already 2 p.m. So may I know if participants, so colleagues, do you have any questions, something else would want to ask the panelists? So you can type or you can voice it out, it's all okay. So if not, then that means we'll be yeah. So some colleagues asked whether the recording will be uploaded. Yeah, so we will provide the recording. So we'll send you. Let me send you several things. So we will provide the slides and the recording as well as the evaluation form afterwards. And by the way, so we also just one more promotion again. So is that we also have a VR webinar. So VR for teaching and learning on March and April. So if you are interested to know more about VR applications, so feel free to join those 2 webinars. And we will keep have different kinds of webinars because of this UGC project. So if you are interested, so please using the evaluation form to give us your email. You can send you notifications later on in the future. Okay, so that's the end of today's webinar. Thanks everybody joining. So thanks Paul, Darren, and Krisha, and everybody attending this webinar and sharing the experience. So hopefully this can help you to design assessment for this semester at least. Hopefully, yeah. So have a good day today and take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.